water, you add some carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and through photosynthesis, plants will give off oxygen and will create simple sugars such as glucose. But the actual process is a lot more complex. So let's get started. So the sun gives off a variety of types of energy, and this energy travels across space in the form of a wave. And the titles of the energy you can see at the top of the picture. Now we're going to focus our attention on visible light because it's the wavelength of visible light that drives and powers photosynthesis. Well, let's focus on how light is absorbed. And when we do, we're going to see that the sun gives off visible light, also called white light. White light is actually a mixture of Roy G. Biv. And what this is are the colors of the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. All of these colors are a mixture known as white light. Well, how do we know this? Because when you shine light into a prism, when you shine white light into a prism, a rainbow comes out the other end. Just like you can see in this animation. White light is entering from the left, and because of the curvature of the prism, Roy G. Biv, the colors of the rainbow are coming out the other end. Notice how the wavelengths are different. Red has a longer wavelength, violet has a more narrow. And so this is how we know that white light is made from a mixture of these colors. Here's an actual picture of white light entering a prism, and you can see on the left-hand side a rainbow is coming out the back end. Moisture in the air can act like a prism and create a rainbow. You ever notice after it rains, you can sometimes see a rainbow in the sky, or in this case, near a waterfall. Because of all the moisture in the sky, the moisture separates the sunlight, into the rainbow colors that you see. And so colors are either reflected or absorbed. When sunlight shines on an object, what we see is reflected light. The reason this leaf appears green is because it's reflecting the green wavelength of light. When light shines on these bananas, the reason it appears yellow is because the yellow wavelength reflects, while the other colors are absorbed. When we shine light on these balloons, the blue wavelength reflects into our eyes, and the other colors are absorbed. When we look at white objects like snow or this Arctic hare, the reason objects appear white is because white reflects all the colors, and all the wavelengths of light enter our eyes, and our brain interprets this as the color white. Well, the opposite would be black. When light shines on a black object, nothing reflects. It all is absorbed, and that's why this automobile appears black, because there's no light reflecting into our eyes. So when we relate this to photosynthesis, plants have mostly green leaves, which means that they're going to reflect the green wavelength, but the other colors are absorbing into the leaves and are going to be powering photosynthesis. In this graph, we can see, for instance, that this graph shows the wavelengths of light that most power photosynthesis. Notice how there's a peak around 400 nanometers. Well, that's the wavelength of blue. There's another peak around 700 nanometers. Well, that's the wavelength of red. So blue light and red light are most stimulating for plants in the process of photosynthesis. Ironically, the color green, around 550 nanometers, the color green that we most associate with plants, actually has the least amount of impact in their ability to do photosynthesis. That's because most green light is reflecting. Very little green light is actually absorbing into the leaf. So when we look at a general definition of photosynthesis, it's the process that converts solar energy into glucose. And this formula here outlines photosynthesis. And in the reactants, we have carbon dioxide and water. And in the presence of sunlight, we'll produce sugars such as glucose and oxygen. Well, who performs photosynthesis? Well, these are the autotrophs. Now, we typically think of plants as doing photosynthesis, but they're not the only ones. Algae, phytoplankton, the basis of ocean food webs, kelp. Kelp can grow into these enormous underwater forests. And even some bacteria known as cyanobacteria are photosynthetic. So there's a lot more autotrophs than just plants.